Hello everyone, today I'm going to tell you about a horrifying case that once shook Malaysia in the 1990s. This chilling story took place in the capital city, Kuala Lumpur, the largest metropolis in the country. In Bangsar, an upscale neighborhood known as Tunku Hill, home to the elite and wealthy, a gruesome event unfolded that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard about it. In 1993, this luxurious area became the scene of a brutal dismemberment case that haunted the public for years. So, what exactly happened? Who was the victim? And most importantly, who was the real perpetrator? Let's dive into this mystery right now. On July 7, 1993, a Wednesday, a city grass-cutting worker was clearing weeds along the roadside on Tunku Hill as part of his routine. This was an upscale residential area known for its quiet surroundings, with very few cars and pedestrians passing by. As the worker bent down to cut the grass, he accidentally came across two black garbage bags lying in the grass. At first, he assumed they were just regular trash, carelessly discarded by someone. However, when he picked them up, he noticed that they felt quite heavy. Out of curiosity, he decided to open one of the bags and was immediately horrified to discover a severed human arm inside. Overcome with fear, he dropped the bag instantly and ran away from the scene in a panic. Even after running a considerable distance, he was still in shock, gasping for breath as he frantically called the police. Due to his extreme distress, he could only stammer incoherently, saying that he had seen a body and urgently pleading for officers to arrive at the scene. When the police arrived, they were equally shocked by the sight of bloodied body parts stuffed inside the black garbage bags. It was immediately clear that they were dealing with an extremely brutal murder and dismemberment case. The authorities swiftly cordoned off the area and began thoroughly inspecting the surroundings. As a result, they discovered several more black garbage bags dumped in a nearby ditch and grass field. Inside, they found thighs, calves, a torso, and other body parts. The remains had been left there for some time, as maggots were already crawling all over them. A forensic doctor later determined that the victim was a woman around 30 years old. However, her head was missing, making it extremely difficult for the police to establish her identity on the day of discovery. 3 days later, on July 11, 1993, the police returned to the crime scene and conducted a more thorough search. Eventually, they discovered two more black garbage bags located a bit farther away, which contained the remaining body parts and the victim's head. Forensic examiners assembled a total of 11 body parts and confirmed that they all belonged to the same person. The victim's head was swollen, the face decomposed with distorted features, almost unrecognizable. The eyes were barely visible, and the mouth was wide open as if frozen in a scream of terror, creating a horrifying sight. Since the face was unidentifiable, the victim's identity remained unknown. Stuck at a dead end, the police had no choice but to turn to the media and seek clues from the public. They released certain physical characteristics of the victim, such as having 6 false teeth, well-maintained fingernails and eyebrows, and neatly trimmed pubic hair. In a bold move to expedite the identification process, the police published a clear, uncensored image of the victim's partially decomposed head in the newspaper. This image became one of the most gruesome and controversial photographs ever published in Malaysian media, shocking the public and leaving many viewers psychologically traumatized. At that time, forensic technology had not yet advanced enough for authorities to reconstruct the victim's appearance from the severely damaged head. To speed up the identification process, the police took an unexpected approach. They sought the help of a street artist at the Central Arts Center, hoping he could reconstruct the victim's face based on the decaying head. The artist, Amiruddin, had previously assisted the police in solving a murder case involving a shaman through his paintings. Upon learning of the police's request, he agreed to help identify the real perpetrator without hesitation. Amiruddin first examined the photograph of the victim's head, then accompanied the police to the morgue to observe it in person. He even closed his eyes and touched the head, using his sense of touch to perceive the subtle contours of the victim's facial structure. Although Amiruddin had no formal artistic training, his portrait drawing skills were exceptional. Confronted with an unrecognizable head, he relied on his expertise and vivid imagination to create 3 portraits of the victim's face after 4 hours of intense effort. He expressed his belief that a person's hairstyle and makeup could significantly alter their appearance. I may not be able to recreate the victim's exact face from a decomposed head, as makeup and hairstyle can drastically change a woman's look. However, I believe that those who knew the victim will be able to recognize her from even the simplest portrait, Amiruddin said in an interview. After completing the 3 portraits, Amiruddin experienced lingering distress from staring at the horrifying photograph of the victim's head. As a result, he became a vegetarian, giving up meat entirely. As an artist, I shouldn't focus solely on commercial work. I'm happy that I can contribute to society through my art, he stated. The police immediately released Amiruddin's portraits to the public, capturing widespread attention. The drawings were simple, with minimal adjustments, but they effectively outlined the victim's facial features. A few days later, the police received a crucial phone call that became a turning point in the investigation. The caller was a landlord from the Bangsar area. A female tenant of mine has been missing for several days, and I haven't been able to contact her. When I saw the portraits published in the newspaper, they resembled my tenant, so I decided to call the police, the landlord reported. Following this lead, the police rushed to the house in Bangsar to investigate. Upon arrival, they found the door locked. No one responded, no matter how hard they knocked. With the landlord's permission, the police forced entry into the house. Although they found no traces of any residents, they discovered a performance photograph of a female entertainer and a piece of paper with an address in Kota Baru, Kelantan. Using the information on the note, the police made multiple phone calls and eventually contacted the missing tenant's sister, who worked as a cashier at a karaoke bar in Petaling Jaya. The following day, she accompanied the police to the morgue for identification. The scene in the morgue was overwhelming and horrifying for an ordinary person. The victim's sister, already feeling unwell that day, continuously coughed and vomited in distress. However, after taking medication and resting, she reluctantly completed the identification process. After closely examining the body, she confirmed that the victim was indeed her younger sister. She stated that the primary reason for her recognition was the victim's neatly trimmed pubic hair. My sister was a performer who sang and danced. Since she often wore revealing outfits and performed sensual movements, she had a habit of trimming her pubic hair for appearance and to avoid accidental exposure, she explained. At the time, DNA technology in Malaysia was still underdeveloped. To confirm the victim's identity, the police took a blood sample from the sister and sent it to Singapore for verification. The identity of the victim was confirmed on July 21, 1993. The woman, named Tai Ao To, was 30 years old and went by the stage name A Little Red. She was a well-known performer at a popular karaoke lounge in the area. She was originally from Kota Baru, Kelantan, and had been working in Kuala Lumpur for over 10 years. She was the youngest of 5 siblings. The person who identified the body that day was her closest sister, Tai Tin Deech. 7 years earlier, Tai Ao Tu had married and given birth to 2 sons. However, due to the worsening relationship between her and her husband, their marriage only lasted 2 years before ending abruptly. Before becoming a performer, Tai Ao-tu worked as a seamstress at a garment factory, specializing in outfits for dancers at the karaoke lounge. During this time, she became drawn to the glamorous entertainment lifestyle and was later introduced to working at the karaoke lounge. She entrusted her two sons to a care center at an orphanage, hoping to provide them with a better living environment. Tai Ao-tu worked diligently and passionately to earn money. Following the tragic incident, her two sons at the orphanage were still unaware that their mother had been brutally murdered. According to Tai Tin Dish, a month before the tragedy, she and her sister had partnered with friends to open a new karaoke lounge in Parade Garden, Petaling Jaya. After years of hard work, her sister was finally fulfilling her dream of becoming a business owner. Everything was going well until this cruel tragedy struck. How could someone be so heartless toward a single mother? She lamented. The police continued their investigation and contacted Tai Ao-tu's ex-husband for information about her. However, he claimed that he had not been in contact with his ex-wife for years and had no motive to harm her. The investigation then expanded into Tai Ao-tu's social relationships, leading to an important discovery. It turned out that she had been involved in a long-term affair with a married man. This man was identified as Nain V. Than, a 33-year-old former theology student from Singapore who had briefly worked as a missionary. At the time of the investigation, he was working as a piano teacher. He had an intellectual, gentle, and refined appearance, always seen wearing glasses. Nan V. Than and Tai Ao-tu first met through a teacher-student relationship when he taught her vocal lessons. Over time, their bond developed into a romantic relationship. However, because Tai Ao-tu was a karaoke lounge performer, their relationship was strongly opposed by Nan V. Than's father. Eventually, he married another woman, but he continued his affair with Tai Ao-tu. Later, he decided to prioritize his marriage and attempted to end his relationship with Tai Ao-tu. However, she had invested significant emotions and finances into their relationship and refused to let go so easily. Their affair became increasingly entangled, with no clear way out. When Nan V. Than's wife discovered his infidelity, she was furious and confronted the mistress. However, Tai Ao-tu was not one to back down easily. She was aggressive and sharp-tongued, directly pointing at the wife's face, hurling insults, and even threatening to cut her into pieces. To prevent Tai Ao-tu from acting irrationally, Nan V. Than reluctantly continued the affair, hoping to keep her emotionally stable while he figured out how to end the relationship. After uncovering this situation, the police suspected that Nan V. Than had a motive to commit the crime. They immediately brought him in for questioning. During the interrogation, he admitted to having a special relationship with Tai Ao-tu. The police then placed a photograph of Tai Ao-tu's severed head in front of him for identification. He only glanced at it briefly and quickly claimed he did not recognize the person in the image. Nan V. Than stated, "I haven't seen her in over 2 weeks." He then presented the police with a note that Tai Ao-tu had allegedly given him earlier. The note read, "I will be in Penang with Lee Vin Hui for 10 days and will contact you when I return." However, a sharp-eyed officer immediately noticed something suspicious. The note was written entirely in Chinese. Since Nan V. Than did not know Chinese, there was no reason for Tai Ao-tu to give him a note he couldn't read. After multiple rounds of interrogation, he became visibly shaken and began revealing inconsistencies in his statements. The police soon exposed critical flaws in his story, leading to further suspicion. Finally, he was officially arrested by the police on suspicion of murder. His wife and mother were also detained pending trial. At the time, his wife was 2 months pregnant, but they were later released due to a lack of evidence. On December 13, 1993, 5 months after Nan V. Than's arrest, the case was brought to trial at the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court Number 5. He was prosecuted for murder under Section 302 of the Malaysian Penal Code. The case gained widespread public attention after being covered by the media. For a time, the "A Little Red" case became a popular topic of discussion in the evenings. People were shocked by the brutality of Nan V. Than's crime and were curious about the punishment he would receive. Before the trial began, many reporters, media personnel, and members of the public gathered outside the court, waiting for Nan V. Than's arrival. Around 2 p.m. that day, he was escorted to the courthouse. As soon as he stepped out of the vehicle, he was surrounded by a crowd. At first, he appeared calm, but as the trial progressed, he struggled to hide his growing anxiety and tension. After the prosecutor finished reading the indictment, he immediately pleaded not guilty in court. The preliminary trial lasted 3 days, after which the judge announced a 2-month adjournment for the second preliminary trial. Nan V. Than was denied bail and remained in custody. Even after 2 months, public interest in the case remained high. Many people were eager to know the final outcome of the trial. 2 months later, in February 1994, the second preliminary trial took place as scheduled. During the proceedings, an unexpected and shocking twist occurred. Perhaps due to a lack of solid evidence, on February 28, 1994, the prosecution suddenly dropped the murder charge against Nan V. Than and instead charged him with manslaughter. The case was transferred to the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court for further trial. Notably, under the law at that time, anyone convicted of murder under Section 302 of the Penal Code would face the death penalty. However, if convicted of manslaughter, the maximum sentence was only 20 years in prison. The prosecution's sudden decision confused the public, as it meant that even if Nan V. Than were found guilty, he would escape the death penalty. After the charge was changed to manslaughter, Nan V. Than altered his previous statements and finally admitted guilt in court. He firmly claimed, "I unintentionally killed Tai Autu because I was forced into a desperate situation." He then recounted the events of that fateful night. "My wife was not home, but Tai Autu insisted on coming to my apartment. After arriving, she wanted to be intimate with me, but I refused. She became furious and started screaming uncontrollably. I had no choice but to try to calm her down. Once she finally relaxed, she went into the bathroom to take a shower. When she came out, she stood in front of me, completely naked, and seduced me. I didn't know how to react, so I reluctantly gave in and had sex with her on the sofa in the living room. Afterward, I felt that things couldn't continue like this, so I suggested ending our affair. Tai Autu was furious. She lost control and hurled insults at me. She also threatened me, demanding that I return the car she had bought for me. At that moment, I realized she felt as if her entire world was collapsing. She had sacrificed so much for me, believing we could have a future together, only to be abandoned. She felt I had never truly valued her or her profession, and that I had no real intention of committing to her. She believed I was only interested in material benefits and the novelty of our relationship. As she continued to hurl insults, I was overwhelmed with rage and wanted to hit her, but I managed to restrain myself. To defuse the situation, I turned on the TV in the living room, hoping to distract her. But just as I turned my back, she suddenly pulled out a knife from somewhere and attacked me wildly. I was shocked by the sudden assault and tried to escape, but she still managed to slash my left finger, causing blood to gush out. I never expected her to be so crazed. I began to fight back and tried to grab the knife from her. We struggled from the living room to the bathroom. Seizing the right moment, I managed to snatch the knife from her hand. During the scuffle, I unintentionally used too much force, and she died as a result. Before I could even react, the knife had pierced her chest, and she collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. With her last bit of strength, she looked at me and said, "How dare you kill me?" I could only watch helplessly as she took her final breath and passed away. After the incident, I was overwhelmed with panic and fear. I never imagined things would escalate to such a terrible extent. My entire body was trembling as I realized I had committed an unforgivable crime. I started thinking about how to deal with the body and ultimately made a bold decision to dismember Tai Ao-tu into 11 pieces. I placed the body parts in several black garbage bags. At that time, my apartment was covered in blood. It took a great deal of effort to clean everything up. Once I was done, I carried the garbage bags out of my apartment and drove to the secluded Tunku Hill to dispose of the body. When I found a suitable spot, I got out of the car and was about to open the trunk when another vehicle passed by. I froze in place. After the car disappeared into the distance, I threw 2 garbage bags into the grass by the roadside, then returned to my apartment to dispose of the remaining bags in different locations. Back at my apartment, I went through Tai Ao-tu's handbag, took out all her documents, burned them, and flushed the ashes down the toilet. I divided her clothes and accessories into several separate bags to discard. As for her ring and necklace, I kept them in my own bag. After finishing everything, I took a shower and went to bed. Nan V. Than's confession was presented in court by his defense lawyer as evidence for manslaughter. His confession also included the statement, "That night was long and unbearable as I kept thinking about the life I had taken with my own hands." He expressed deep remorse and guilt over his actions. His lawyer emphasized that Tai Ao-tu had an obsessive and controlling nature over Nan V. Than. Even after he got married and started a new life, she refused to let go, which indirectly led to the tragedy. Nan V. Than also claimed Tai Ao-tu repeatedly insulted, belittled, and humiliated my family. I couldn't endure her constant harassment, mental attacks, and threats anymore, so I decided to end the relationship as quickly as possible. The prosecution's decision to downgrade the charge from murder to manslaughter was largely based on the defense's argument regarding Tai Ao-tu's unstable mental state, the complex emotional entanglement, and the alleged physical threats she posed to the defendant. However, the prosecution remained skeptical of Nan V. Than's confession. They argued that given the cruel and calculated way he disposed of the body, he must have harbored deep resentment toward the victim. His actions that night might not have been an impulsive reaction, but a premeditated murder. Ultimately, everything known about what happened that night was based solely on Nan V. Than's account. The truth might not have been exactly as he described, and there was still the possibility that he had orchestrated a deliberate murder. On March 19, 1994, the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court sentenced the defendant, Nan V. Than, to 15 years in prison for manslaughter, with the sentence calculated from the date of his arrest. However, Nan V. Than found the punishment too severe, refused to accept the verdict, and appealed to the Kuala Lumpur Court of Appeal. Later that year, on December 3, 1994, the Kuala Lumpur Court of Appeal reduced his sentence from the initial 15 years to 12 years. Additionally, he was ordered to compensate the victim's family with 1,000 ringgit, approximately $227.09 at the exchange rate at the time. If he failed to pay, he would face an additional year in prison. After learning of her husband's heinous crime, Nan V. Than's wife divorced him and terminated her pregnancy. She then left to start a new life elsewhere. Years later, some media outlets revisited the luxury apartment where Nan V. Than had murdered Tai Ao-tu. The floor had 3 apartments, including the crime scene. The door of Nan Vi Than's former unit was a simple wooden door covered in dust. For years, all 3 apartments on that floor had been abandoned, as no one wanted to live there. The atmosphere was eerie and unsettling. Many residents had moved out after hearing about the gruesome murder and dismemberment that had taken place there. Meanwhile, the scenery of Tunku Hill, where Nan Vi Than disposed of the body, remained as beautiful and serene as before. In the year 2000, Nan Vi Than was released early due to good behavior in prison. He changed his name and moved with his parents to an undisclosed location. Rumors circulated that he continued his theological studies and became a missionary, following in his father's footsteps. Perhaps he sought to spend the rest of his life atoning for his crime. As of today, more than 20 years have passed since Nan Vi Than re-entered society. No one knows his current name or whereabouts. There were reports of people recognizing him at a church, but he firmly denied his identity and silently turned away. In the end, the case of Tai Ao Tu came to a close, but its echoes lingered. A forbidden love, impulsive decisions, and selfishness had led everyone down an irreversible path. The perpetrator served his sentence, but was justice truly served? To this day, no one knows where Nan Vi Than is. He has changed his identity and continued his life as if nothing had ever happened. This case remains a profound lesson about blind love, betrayal, and the unforeseen consequences of illicit relationships. If you found this story thought-provoking, leave a comment to share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more chilling true crime cases. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.